Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by thick, whispering forest, the villagers often spoke about the mysterious drums of forbidden love. The drums were said to be hidden deep in the forest, where sunlight barely touched the ground, and strange creatures roamed. There were a series of stories about the drum of love. The story went that if you played the drums, they would tell the tale of a love so powerful that even the stars wept for it. But there was a catch: anyone who touched the drums would awaken the forest spirit, and no one dared to find out what would happen next. In that village lived two best friends, Maya and Kofi. They loved adventures and solving mysteries. One evening, as the orange sun dipped behind the mountains, Maya and Kofi sat under the big old tree near the village square. The villagers were busy preparing for the moon festival, and the air smelled of roasted corn and sweet fruits. "Kofi," Maya whispered, her eyes shining with excitement, "what if we find the drums of forbidden love?" Kofi's jaw dropped. "No way. That's too dangerous. The forest spirit will get us." "But think about it," Maya said, leaning closer. "What if the drums are real? What if the legend is true? Wouldn't it be amazing to hear their story?" Kofi scratched his head. He wasn't as brave as Maya, but he couldn't deny he was curious. "Okay," he said finally, "but we have to be super careful." That night, when the village was asleep and the full moon lit up the sky, Maya and Kofi sneaked out. They carried a small lantern and a map Maya had drawn based on the stories they'd heard from the elders. The forest was alive with sounds: crickets chirping, owls hooting, and leaves rustling in the cool breeze. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees grew taller and the air colder. "Are you sure about this?" Kofi whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "Trust me," Maya said, though her own heart was pounding. Hours passed, or so it seemed, and just when Kofi thought they were lost, they heard it. A faint, rhythmic drumming. Boom boom. Boom boom. It was soft but steady, like a heartbeat. "Do you hear that?" Maya asked, her voice barely audible. Kofi nodded, his eyes wide. They followed the sound, their lantern casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. And then, they saw it. In a small clearing, surrounded by glowing blue flowers, stood the drums of forbidden love. They were large and ancient, with intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story of their own. The air around them shimmered, as if magic itself guarded the place. "We found it," Maya whispered, stepping closer. "Wait." Kofi grabbed her arm. "What if the forest spirit is watching?" But Maya's curiosity was too strong. She reached out and lightly touched the drum. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, the drumming stopped. The forest fell silent. Then, a soft, melodic voice filled the air, speaking words neither of them could understand. Kofi's grip on Maya's arm tightened. What's happening?" Before Maya could answer, the ground beneath them began to glow, and a tall, shimmering figure emerged from the shadows. Its eyes were as bright as the stars, and its voice was both gentle and powerful. "Why have you come here?" the figure asked. Maya and Kofi froze, their hearts pounding. They didn't know what to say. The forest spirit had awakened, and it was waiting for their answer. Maya took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she spoke. We wanted to hear the story of the drums." The spirit's glowing eyes narrowed. "The story of the drums is not meant for just anyone. It holds the power to change the fate of hearts. Tell me, do you seek this tale for wisdom, or for selfish desires?" Kofi found his voice. We don't mean any harm," he stammered. "We are just curious." The spirit tilted its head, studying them closely. Then, with a wave of its hand, the drums began to hum softly. "Very well. But if you wish to know the tale, you must first prove yourselves worthy. A journey lies ahead, filled with trials. Only then will you uncover the truth. Maya and Kofi exchanged nervous glances. What kind of trials? Maya asked. The spirit smiled, a mysterious glint in its eyes. Follow the path to the star pool. There, your first challenge awaits. But beware, for not all who begin this journey will finish it. Before they could ask more, the spirit faded into the air, leaving behind only the glowing drums and the faint sound of distant drumming. Maya's heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. Kofi, we have to do this. Kofi hesitated, but something about the spirit's words sparked a bravery he didn't know he had. All right, he said, gripping the lantern tightly. Let's find the star pool. As they turned to follow the path the spirit had pointed out, the forest seemed to shift around them, alive with secrets. The adventure was only just beginning. The path to the star pool was unlike anything Maya and Kofi had ever seen. The trees glowed faintly, their leaves shimmering with an otherworldly light. The air was filled with a faint hum, as though the forest itself was singing a song too ancient to understand. Do you think this is part of the first trial? Kofi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya nodded. It has to be. Stay alert. The spirit said not everyone finishes the journey. Suddenly, the path split into two. One path was bathed in golden light, warm and inviting, while the other was cloaked in shadow, cold and foreboding. A stone marker stood between them, inscribed with glowing runes. Maya knelt to read it, her fingers tracing the letters. Only one path leads to truth, she read aloud. Choose wisely, for the wrong path will test your courage and your bond. Kofi gulped. How do we know which one is the right path? Maya looked between the two paths, her mind racing. I don't think it's about which path looks safer. The spirit wants to test us. Maybe we're supposed to trust each other. Kofi hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but which one do we take? Maya closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the forest. After a moment, she pointed to the shadowy path. This one. It feels like it's calling to us. Kofi shivered but followed her lead. As they stepped onto the shadowy path, the forest around them seemed to come alive. Shapes moved in the darkness, and whispers filled the air, growing louder with every step. Do you hear that? Kofi asked, gripping the lantern tightly. Maya nodded. Stay close. Whatever this is, we face it together. The whispers turned into voices, each one speaking a different truth or fear. They echoed in Maya and Kofi's minds, testing their resolve. But with each step, their bond grew stronger, and the path ahead became clearer. Finally, they emerged into a clearing where a pool of water sparkled like the night sky. The star pool. In its center floated a single, glowing flower, its petals shifting colors like a living rainbow. We made it, Maya breathed, awestruck. But before they could celebrate, the water rippled, and another figure began to rise from the pool. Its eyes glowed with the same light as the spirit's, but its presence felt far more intense. You have reached the star pool, the figure said, its voice echoing like thunder. Now, prove your worth. The figure's voice hung in the air as the glow of the star pool intensified. The water swirled, forming shapes that looked like stars dancing in the night. The figure extended a hand, and the glowing flower in the center of the pool rose into the air, its colors shifting faster now. Your first trial is one of trust, the figure said. Each of you must choose. Only one can take the flower, but the choice will affect you both. Maya and Kofi glanced at each other. What does that mean? Kofi asked nervously. If one of you takes the flower, the figure explained, you will carry its burden. The other must guide you through what lies ahead. Decide wisely. Maya looked at the flower, then at Kofi. I take it, she said firmly. You've already followed me this far. Let me carry the weight. Kofi hesitated. But what if it's too much? What if you need me to? Kofi, Maya interrupted, her voice steady, we're in this together. I trust you to guide me. Do you trust me to carry this? Kofi swallowed hard, then nodded. I trust you. The figure watched silently as Maya stepped forward, reaching for the flower. The moment her fingers closed around it, the pool erupted in a burst of light. Maya gasped as the flower's glow spread through her, its colors swirling around her like a living aura. The figure's voice hung in the air as the glow of the star pool intensified. The water swirled, forming shapes that looked like stars dancing in the night. The figure extended a hand, and the glowing flower in the center of the pool rose into the air, its colors shifting faster now. Your first trial is one of trust, the figure said. Each of you must choose. Only one can take the flower, but the choice will affect you both. Maya and Kofi glanced at each other. What does that mean? Kofi asked nervously. If one of you takes the flower, the figure explained, you will carry its burden. The other must guide you through what lies ahead. Decide wisely. Maya looked at the flower, then at Kofi. I take it, she said firmly. You've already followed me this far. Let me carry the weight. Kofi hesitated. But what if it's too much? What if you need me to? Kofi, Maya interrupted, her voice steady, we're in this together. I trust you to guide me. Do you trust me to carry this? Kofi swallowed hard, then nodded. I trust you. The figure watched silently as Maya stepped forward, reaching for the flower. The moment her fingers closed around it, the pool erupted in a burst of light. Maya gasped as the flower's glow spread through her, its colors swirling around her like a living aura. Maya's grip on the flower tightened. She looked at Kofi, whose eyes darted between the two paths. We have to choose the path of truth, she said. The spirit didn't send us here for comfort. Kofi hesitated. What if the truth is too much? What if he trailed off, unable to finish the thought? We'll face it together, Maya said. We have to. Taking a deep breath, they stepped onto the misty path. The air grew colder with every step, and the mist seemed to cling to them like a living thing. The drumming grew louder, its rhythm syncopated, as if mirroring their racing hearts. Suddenly, the mist parted, revealing a clearing filled with mirrors. Each mirror was different, some tall, some small, some cracked, and some perfectly smooth. As they entered the clearing, the mirrors began to shimmer, and images appeared within them. Maya saw herself standing alone, holding the flower, while Kofi saw an image of himself lost in the forest, calling out for help. What is this? Kofi whispered, his voice barely audible. The figure's voice echoed around them, though the figure itself was nowhere to be seen. The mirrors show your deepest fears and your greatest doubts. To move forward, you must face them and accept the truths they reveal. Only then will the drums guide you further. Maya's image in the mirror began to move, stepping closer to her. The reflection spoke, its voice a perfect echo of her own. You think you can carry the weight of this journey alone, but what if you can't? What if Kofi's trust in you is misplaced? Maya's heart pounded. That's not true, she said aloud, though her voice wavered. Meanwhile, Kofi's reflection sneered at him. You're nothing but a follower, it said. You let Maya lead because you're too afraid to make your own choices. What will you do when she leaves you behind? Kofi clenched his fists, his mind racing. Maya would never do that, he said, but doubt crept into his voice. The reflections grew larger, their voices louder, until it felt like the entire clearing was filled with accusations and fears. Maya and Kofi looked at each other, desperation in their eyes. We can't let this stop us, Maya said, her voice shaking. The spirit said this journey would test us. We have to trust each other. Kofi nodded, though his hands trembled. Then let's face it together. They reached for each other's hands and stepped closer to the mirrors. As they faced their reflections head-on, the images began to change. Maya's reflection smiled, its eyes softening. "You are stronger than you think," it said. "But strength is not about carrying everything alone. Trust is your greatest ally." Kofi's reflection nodded, its expression gentle. "You are not just a follower. Your choices matter, and your courage lies in supporting those you care about." The mirrors shattered into a cascade of light, and the drumming stopped. The clearing dissolved, leaving them standing on a new path, brighter and clearer than before. As they continued down the path, the drums grew louder, more resonant, until they reached a grand clearing. In the center stood an ancient drum, carved from a single tree and painted with vibrant patterns. The spirit reappeared, its form shimmering like the surface of a lake. "You have proven yourselves worthy," the spirit said. "The drum before you is the drum of truth. Strike it, and it will reveal the true harmony of your hearts and the path forward." Maya and Kofi exchanged a glance, their hands still clasped. Together, they approached the drum. With one steady motion, they struck it. A deep, resonant Maya's grip on the flower tightened. She looked at Kofi, whose eyes darted between the two paths. "We have to choose the path of truth," she said. "The spirit didn't send us here for comfort." Kofi hesitated. "What if the truth is too much? What if we—" He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "What is this?" Kofi whispered, his voice barely audible. The figure's voice echoed around them, though the figure itself was nowhere to be seen. "The mirrors show your deepest fears and your greatest doubts. To move forward, you must face them and accept the truths they reveal. Only then will the drums guide you further." Maya's image in the mirror began to move, stepping closer to her. The reflection spoke, its voice a perfect echo of her own. "You think you can carry the weight of this journey alone, but what if you can't? What if Kofi's trust in you is misplaced?" Maya's heart pounded. "That's not true," she said aloud, though her voice wavered. Meanwhile, Kofi's reflection sneered at him. "You're nothing but a follower," it said. "You let Maya lead because you're too afraid to make your own choices. What will you do when she leaves you behind?" Kofi clenched his fists, his mind racing. "Maya would never do that," he said, but doubt crept into his voice. The reflections grew larger, their voices louder, until it felt like the entire clearing was filled with accusations and fears. Maya and Kofi looked at each other, desperation in their eyes. "We can't let this stop us," Maya said, her voice shaking. "The spirit said this journey would test us. We have to trust each other." Kofi nodded, though his hands trembled. "Then let's face it together." They reached for each other's hands and stepped closer to the mirrors. As they faced their reflections head-on, the images began to change. Maya's reflection smiled, its eyes softening. "You are stronger than you think," it said. "But strength is not about carrying everything alone. Trust is your greatest ally." Kofi's reflection nodded, its expression gentle. "You are not just a follower. Your choices matter, and your courage lies in supporting those you care about." The mirrors shattered into a cascade of light, and the drumming stopped. The clearing dissolved, leaving them standing on a new path, brighter and clearer than before. As they continued down the path, the drums grew louder, more resonant, until they reached a grand clearing. In the center stood an ancient drum, carved from a single tree and painted with vibrant patterns. The spirit reappeared, its form shimmering like the surface of a lake. "You have proven yourselves worthy," the spirit said. "The drum before you is the drum of truth. Strike it, and it will reveal the true harmony of your hearts and the path forward." Maya and Kofi exchanged a glance, their hands still clasped. Together, they approached the drum. With one steady motion, they struck it. A deep, resonant sound filled the air, washing over them like a wave. Images of their journey appeared around them, their doubts, their courage, and their bond. As they walked, the burden on Maya seemed lighter, and Kofi's confidence grew. They reached another clearing, where a pedestal stood with an ancient book resting atop it. The book's cover shimmered like starlight, and it seemed to pulse in rhythm with the flower's glow. The figure from the star pool reappeared. You have faced the first trial and begun to understand the burden of truth and trust. Now, to unlock the next chapter of the drum story, you must open the Book of Echoes. It will reveal a truth about the drums and yourselves. Maya and Kofi exchanged a glance, their bond stronger than ever. Together, they stepped forward, ready to uncover the next piece of the legend of the drums of forbidden love. Maya reached out to touch the shimmering cover of the Book of Echoes, her fingers trembling. The moment her hand made contact, the book opened with a soft hum, its pages glowing. Words began to appear, written in a language neither Maya nor Kofi could read, but the meaning somehow resonated in their minds. The figure watched them with its glowing eyes. The book will guide you to the next challenge. Each trial draws you closer to the truth of the drums. But beware, the deeper you go, the more your inner strength and bond will be tested. As they gazed at the glowing pages, the forest around them shifted once more. The stone labyrinth faded, and they found themselves in a vast expanse of mist. The air was thick, making it hard to see or breathe. Shapes moved in the mist, shadows that whispered as they passed. Kofi clutched the lantern tighter. What now? This place feels wrong. Maya glanced at the book, now hovering before them. It says we must find the pillars of memory. Only there can we uncover the second truth. The mist seemed to push against them as they moved forward. Strange whispers filled the air, growing louder with each step. The shadows took on more defined forms, and soon they weren't just passing shapes, they were memories. Maya saw her younger self arguing with her parents, their faces filled with disappointment. Kofi saw himself failing to climb a tree during a childhood dare, the laughter of other children ringing in his ears. These are our fears, Maya said, her voice steadied despite the pain in her eyes. The things we've tried to forget. The shadows began to close in, their whispers turning into accusations. Maya and Kofi found themselves surrounded, their worst moments replaying over and over. You'll never be enough, one shadow hissed at Maya. You're too scared to lead, another growled at Kofi. Kofi clenched his fists. They are just illusions, he muttered, but his voice wavered. Maya stepped forward, her aura glowing brighter as she held the flower. No, she said firmly. They are not illusions. They are pieces of us, flaws we have to accept. She turned to Kofi, her hand outstretched. We faced them together. Kofi hesitated, then grasped her hand. The moment he did, the shadows recoiled, their whispers fading into silence. The mist parted, revealing a circle of ancient stone pillars, each inscribed with glowing runes. The pillars of memory. The figure appeared again, its presence more imposing. You have passed the trial of reflection, it said. Now, for the second challenge. The runes on the pillars lit up, and the ground trembled. A massive stone archway emerged, its entrance swirling with golden light. The trial of sacrifice, the figure intoned. Each of you must give something precious to you. Only then will the archway open. Maya and Kofi exchanged uncertain looks. What do we give? Kofi asked. The figure gestured to the glowing archway. Something of great value, something tied to your essence. Choose wisely. Maya reached for her satchel and pulled out a small charm bracelet. It was old, its beads worn smooth from years of handling. This was my mother's, she said softly. She gave it to me before she passed. Kofi looked down at the wooden carving he always carried, a tiny figurine of a lion, carved by his grandfather. It had been his good luck charm since he was a boy. This is the only thing I have left from my grandfather, he said. Maya hesitated, clutching the bracelet. Do we really have to give this up? The figure nodded. Only through sacrifice can you prove your commitment to the path you've chosen. Kofi stepped forward first, placing the carving at the base of the archway. It glowed briefly before vanishing. He turned to Maya, his expression encouraging. We're in this together, remember? Maya swallowed hard, then placed the bracelet beside the carving. It too vanished in a burst of light. The archway shimmered, its swirling light growing brighter. You have passed the trial of sacrifice, the figure said, its voice softer now. Your willingness to let go of what you hold dear proves the strength of your heart. Step through the archway, and the final trial will begin. Maya and Kofi stood hand in hand as they crossed into the golden light. On the other side, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with stars, as though they were floating in the cosmos. At the center of the chamber stood the drums of forbidden love, glowing with an ethereal light. The figure appeared one last time. Your final trial is the trial of harmony, it said. The drums must be played, but their song will reveal the truth of your bond. Play together, or fail. Maya and Kofi exchanged nervous smiles. Together, Maya said, her voice filled with determination. Kofi nodded. Always. They approached the drums, their hands trembling as they touched the ancient carvings. The moment they struck the first note, the chamber came alive with light and sound. The drums resonated with their emotions, weaving a melody of love, trust, and sacrifice. As the song reached its crescendo, the stars around them paused brighter, and the figure spoke once more. You have proven your worth. The drums of forbidden love have shared their tale through you. Carry their lesson in your hearts, for you are now their keepers. The drums' glow softened, and the chamber faded. Maya and Kofi found themselves back in the clearing where their journey began, the forest quiet and serene. In their hands, they held a small, glowing gem, a piece of the drum's magic, gifted to them as a reminder of their adventure. They looked at each other, smiles spreading across their faces. They had faced their fears, made sacrifices, and strengthened their bond. The legend of the drums was no longer just a story, it was now a part of them. As Maya and Kofi stood in the clearing, holding the glowing gem gifted by the drums of forbidden love, the figure reappeared, its luminous eyes gazing at them with quiet intensity. The journey back is as important as the journey here, it said. To carry the magic of the drum safely, you must overcome the final trials. The forest will test you, for the power you hold is sacred, and not all wish for it to leave. The clearing darkened, the glowing blue flowers dimming until only the gem in their hands provided light. A cold wind swept through the trees, and the forest seemed to close in around them. The first trial began as they retraced their steps. The forest seemed familiar, yet subtly altered, paths that had been straightforward were now winding, and landmarks had vanished. Suddenly, the figure of an elderly villager appeared on the path ahead. Children, the old woman said, her voice quivering, you carry a great burden. Let me take it from you, so you may return home safely. Maya hesitated, clutching the gem tightly. Who are you? She asked. I am a guide, the woman said, her tone soothing. The magic you carry is dangerous. If you give it to me, I will ensure it harms no one. Kofi frowned, stepping protectively in front of Maya. How do we know we can trust you? The woman's smile faltered for a moment before she extended her hand, her fingers curling unnaturally. You doubt me, she hissed, her voice deepening. Her form began to shift, her features twisting into something grotesque. The gem is ours to protect, Maya said firmly, stepping back. We earned it. The creature lunged, its claws reaching for the gem, but Maya and Kofi's combined resolve created a shield of light around them. The creature shrieked and vanished, leaving the forest silent once more. That was a trick, Kofi said, his voice shaky. We have to be more careful. Maya nodded. The forest is testing our determination. As they ventured further, the forest turned hostile. The ground beneath them became muddy and treacherous, pulling at their feet. Branches swayed and lashed out as if alive, and the air grew heavy with a strange fog that made it difficult to breathe. We have to keep moving, Maya said, her voice strained. But the forest seemed to sense their weariness, throwing obstacle after obstacle in their way. A sudden storm broke overhead, drenching them in cold rain. The gem's light flickered, as if it, too, struggled against the forest wrath. I don't know if we can do this, Kofi admitted, sinking to his knees. Maya knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. We didn't come this far to give up now, she said, her voice firm. The spirit trusted us with the gem. We have to trust ourselves. Kofi took a deep breath and nodded, finding strength in her words. Together, they pressed on, using the gem's faint glow to guide them. The storm eventually calmed, and the mud hardened beneath their feet, the forest seeming to acknowledge their resilience. The forest's final trial was not one of strength but of their bond. As they neared the village, a sudden chasm opened before them, separating them. The gap was wide and deep, and the only way across was a narrow, rickety bridge that could barely support one person at a time. "I'll go first and help you from the other side," Maya said, stepping onto the bridge. "No," Kofi said quickly. "If something happens to you." "We have to trust each other," Maya interrupted, her voice steady. "I trust you to follow." Kofi hesitated but nodded. Maya moved slowly across the bridge, the wood creaking ominously with each step. She reached the other side and turned back, extending her hand. "Your turn." Kofi began crossing, but halfway across, the bridge started to collapse. He froze, panic in his eyes. "Maya," he shouted. "Don't look down." Maya called back. "Look at me. You can do this." Kofi took a shaky breath and continued, one step at a time, until he grasped her hand. As soon as he was safely on solid ground, the bridge vanished, the chasm sealing behind them. "That was close," Kofi said, his heart racing. Maya smiled. "But we made it, together." As they approached the village, the gem in their hands pulsed brighter, and the figure appeared one last time. "You have faced the trials of deception, resilience, and connection," it said. "The magic of the drums now resides in your heart as much as in the gem. Use it wisely, for it holds the power to inspire love, heal wounds, and mend broken bonds." The gem floated from Maya's hands, splitting into two smaller pieces. One settled into Maya's palm, and the other into Kofi's. "These pieces will guide you when the world needs the wisdom of the drums," the figure said before fading into the air. As they entered the village, the first rays of dawn lit the horizon. The villagers, preparing for the final night of the moon festival, greeted them with puzzled smiles. "What happened?" one elder asked. Maya and Kofi glanced at each other, sharing a secret smile. "Just an adventure," Maya said. But they both knew the truth. The legend of the drums of forbidden love was no longer just a story, it was now a part of their souls, a legacy they were destined to protect and share. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Maya and Kofi trudged into their village, exhausted but triumphant. Their clothes were torn, their faces smudged with dirt, but their eyes gleamed with a light that hadn't been there before. Each held a shard of the glowing gem, its soft radiance hinting at the magic they had encountered in the forest. The villagers, still buzzing with preparations for the moon festival, turned to look at the pair. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they noticed the faint glow emanating from the shards and the aura of otherworldliness surrounding Maya and Kofi. "By the ancestors, they've returned from the forest," cried one of the elders, their voice a mix of awe and disbelief. The crowd quickly gathered around them, murmuring questions and exclamations of wonder. "Did you truly find the drums of forbidden love? What is that light you carry? Did you see the forest spirit?" Maya and Kofi exchanged a glance, their bond stronger than ever after their trials. Maya stepped forward, her voice steady despite her weariness. "We found the drums," she began, her words silencing the crowd. "And we learned their story. But it wasn't just the drums or the magic that mattered, it was the journey, the trials, and what we discovered about ourselves and each other." The elder who had first spoken, Elder Adoma, stepped closer, her wise eyes scanning the young pair. "You ventured where none have dared in generations," she said. "You faced the trials of the forest and returned not only with the drum's magic but with wisdom in your hearts. Such bravery and strength deserve recognition." Elder Adoma raised her hands, calling for silence. "Tonight, at the Moon Festival, we will honor Maya and Kofi for their courage and their bond. They have shown us that even the most daunting legends can be faced with trust and determination." That evening, the village square was transformed into a dazzling celebration. Lanterns of every color illuminated the night, and the aroma of roasted corn, sweet fruits, and spiced meats filled the air. The villagers gathered in a semicircle around a large bonfire, their faces glowing with excitement and reverence. Maya and Kofi were led to the center of the gathering, their glowing shards in hand. Elder Adoma stood beside them, her voice ringing clear above the crackling fire. Tonight, we celebrate not only the Moon Festival but the extraordinary bravery of Maya and Kofi, she announced. These two have ventured into the Whispering Forest, faced its trials, and returned with a piece of its magic and its wisdom. From this day forth, they shall be known as the keepers of the drums. The villagers erupted into applause and cheers, some beating their hands rhythmically on makeshift drums in celebration. Maya and Kofi exchanged a glance, their smiles reflecting their shared pride and humility. Elder Adoma continued, as keepers, they remind us that the strength of our bonds and the courage of our hearts are greater than any fear or legend. They will guide us if ever the magic of the drums is needed again. The ceremony reached its climax when Maya and Kofi raised their shards of the gem. As they held them high, the pieces began to glow brighter, casting a warm, golden light over the entire village. The villagers gasped in awe as the light seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, a reminder of the love and courage the drums symbolized. As the festival carried on with dancing, singing, and storytelling, Maya and Kofi found a quiet moment under the old tree near the village square, the same tree where their journey had begun. They sat side by side, the shards glowing softly in their hands. I can't believe they are calling us keepers, Kofi said, shaking his head with a smile. Do you think we're ready for that? Maya chuckled. We face the forest spirit, the trials, and the unknown. I think we can handle a title. Kofi laughed, the sound carrying a newfound confidence. Fair point. But you know what? I think the real adventure isn't over. It's just beginning. Maya nodded, her gaze fixed on the festival lights and the joyous faces of their neighbors. And we'll face whatever comes next together, just like we always have. In that moment, beneath the starlit sky and the watchful eyes of their village, Maya and Kofi felt a sense of purpose greater than themselves. They weren't just adventurers anymore, they were keepers, protectors of a legend, and bearers of a story that would inspire generations to come. Moral lesson of The Drums of Forbidden Love is that trust, unity, and self-awareness are the keys to overcoming challenges. Maya and Kofi learned that true strength lies not in facing obstacles alone but in relying on one another and embracing their vulnerabilities. By confronting their deepest fears and doubts, they discovered the power of harmony and mutual support, which allowed them to grow as individuals and as a team. This story teaches us that honesty with ourselves and those we care about is essential for finding our true path.